second generation. They're being put into equipment that's far better than to begin with than we ever did. My first race car I ever owned, I paid $25 for it and stuff, and we put a roll bar in it and did that, and we worked up through the years. I get some people that come by and everything and go, man, you guys are just loaded, you have all this money. Well, it took me 30 years to get where I'm at. And I just didn't go out and buy it overnight and that kind of stuff and do that. But it also comes from understanding your stuff. It's what I was heard from a long time ago. It's the one that rubs on the race car the most is the one that wins. And we spend a lot of time under our car and paying attention to what's going on and trying to perfect everything we can. And I think that that's pretty important. We care about it, but on the same hand, I might be a little bit more conservative sometimes because I'm also one that has to fix it and pay for it.
You talk about the young drivers and stuff. You got Colin Weinbarger. You got Bryson James, Joey Tanner. Another wrap that you did for his car looks absolutely amazing. But you got these three guys that are coming up, and Joey and Bryson. They're doing a lot of tours. They're going to California. They're going on the Bud Nationals. They're doing all that type of stuff, and they're racing against a lot of guys that bring a lot of money. A lot of top dollar equipment. And they're bringing it to these guys. How do you feel when you go to the track and you see Colin and you see Bryson and stuff and say, hey, do you race those guys, like you would race anybody else, or do you race those guys going, hey, those are the young guns, those are the guys we have to beat?
Well, I like to go in there and I just want to prove to them that us old guys can still rule sometimes. So, quite honestly, I kind of go in with a bit of an attitude on that, and I want to beat them, and I have more fun if I can come out of that. I could go, hey, I beat Colin tonight. Or whatever. I go home with that, and I feel pretty proud about that. To be able to do it, they're younger and they've got better reflexes and stuff. You lose some of that after a while. And to be able to go there and just prove that you can compete with them is pretty important.
See, for me to hear that, my jaw hits the floor, because those are the kids that are going, man, I finished ahead of Darren Coffell. With the legendary status and these guys looking up to you for so long, now to be on the same racetrack with you, those guys they're just in awe. To be able to race with a quality racer, they know they can go 100 laps side by side and not have to worry about getting taken out. To have that as a in the back of your mind, it's thinking, I can race Darren hard, we can go side by side, and then if they can get ahead of you and finish ahead of you, those kids in the back of their mind, they're thinking, man, I just beat Darren Coffell at Willamette Speedway, or you are the kind of the standard in the industry as far as professionalism. When you and Arnie were together for so long and had so much success, and I know he took off for the wilderness of Alaska to kind of relax, and your program really didn't fall off a whole bunch. You guys had that chemistry. You had a really good foundation. So when he left the team, you kind of carried forward. But the whole career, for these kids to race with you, it's got to be a real thrill for them. For anybody to race on the same track with you. But over your career, let's talk about, is there any particular race that may have that stands out in your mind as, man, that was my favorite one. That was the best show that we've ever had together, or any particular racer that you really enjoyed racing with?
Well, I think there's definitely one race that was probably the one race that'll stand out in our whole career, and we're racing down in Reno, Nevada. And it was a California tour that came up there, and there was some very big names in there, including Eric Johnson and stuff, who was, he had big haulers, extra cars, everything. And we were running around there, and we were running around fourth, fifth, something like that. That's probably about as good a car as we really had. And something happened with one of the, John Silva came up to there, and he got up into the side of me and moved me out of the way pretty good. And it just set me off on that deal, and I just went and just pounded him back, because I just, I'll race him pretty clean, but if you hit me, I'm going to hit you back. And that just kind of started the whole escalation. And another car kind of came up there and passed us on a start and showed me where the lane was to be. And we were sitting in third with about 3 laps to go, and we had a restart. And I took off, and I went past the 2 lead cars like they were parked on the restart down the front straightaway. And I was able to just hold them off for the rest of the thing, because they were really probably faster than we were. But we held them off, and we went over to the scales to scale in there. I've never been teched so hard in my entire life and stuff. They were, I mean, the promoters were jumping up and down, you're the roughest driver ever. I go, really? Because I didn't start it, But they had told us earlier, because we had aluminum motor, that you had to have 50 pounds in front of the motor plate. But they also told us, we'll never check that, so as long as you got something bolted up there. Well, they said they were going to check, see if we had 50 pounds on there. And to be totally honest, we didn't know if it was 50 pounds. It was close, and we had to take the weights off of there. So we took the weights, the bolts, the clamps, everything up there, and put them on the scales. And Arnie was there at the time, and he sitting on the scales, kind of bouncing around. He reached over in the scales and touched it with his toe. And the second it bounced 50, he yanked them off there, said there it was, 50 pounds. I didn't know if we were going to get out of there alive.
That's a story that you're always going to live with. That is cool. With some of the changes and stuff now, you talk about racing, the early 90s at Willamette Speedway and all the generations and stuff that you have raced there and how many changes that came through that track. Now new ownership and stuff, and they changed that whole facility. Now that has a huge wall. I remember watching you years and years when we used to pit on the inside there and just watching the amazement. You coming out going down the front stretch, hanging it way up on the cushion, and where the drop-off was, just watching you hang that right rear and just kind of just railing it all the way down, letting the car set, and going back into 3 and 4. How do you like the changes and stuff now that they've done to Willamette? Is it more racy now, since they've done all the changes and kind of banked it up a little bit and put the whole wall around it, or do you like it the way it used to be?
Well, the wall is always intimidating. It was always fun to have an escape route. And when they put the wall in there, it kind of took the escape route out, but it gave you a place to run against. It really depends on how the track is prepped, because there's times when they got a cushion up there that you can get up against and not worry about the fence. But, anymore, you can bounce off and hit the fence pretty quickly and tear up a car. And it certainly isn't cheap when that happens. I like the new configuration, but I guess I kind of like the old configuration somewhat. It was probably technically a bit more challenging, but the speeds at the new one are probably higher than it used to be. It's just it's different. When we raced in the days that Claire ran the thing, Claire had his own little style. And as far as championships go, you guys were around and probably saw that. If you won a championship, your next year was going to be extremely difficult. Claire was going to make sure that you didn't win a second one. And so if you could come into second and be close into it, you had to feel pretty good about that.
There's no doubt about that. When you won a championship at Willamette Speedway, you didn't just race the racetrack and the field, but you raced Claire in his water truck as well. But, talking about the old configuration that Josh brought up and the new configuration, from what I see in the tower announcing the races, I would almost say the new configuration kind of fits your style of driving a little better in the fact that, and I don't want you to take offense to this, but you're one of those drivers that are so sneaky, you can start 22nd or 20th in the pack and not do anything real super flashy. And the next thing you know, the 46 car is sitting in third, and everybody's going, where did Coffell come from? Because they're too busy watching these guys that are up on top, slamming it around, and you're just so smooth and methodical in your approach on the racetrack. I think that the new configuration really benefits Darren Coffell as a driver from what I can see in the tower looking down the track. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think I think consistency and just stay in your line and not getting all wound up, because if you run up against a fence really hard, you can go really good for a couple laps and then not so much. And as long as you're just patient and just ride it out, you probably will go forwards. To be honest, there's a lot of nights that I'm sitting there and all of a sudden we're up into third. I'm going, wow, how'd that happen?
Yeah, it is definitely amazing watching you. Watched you half a dozen, times last year, and you are one of the smoothest drivers out there. I can, like you said, I can see you run on the top groove, and then all of a sudden you're pacing someone down behind, and they'll sit there and they say, "Oh, Coffell's up high. I'm gonna go high because he's gonna pass me." What do? Goes right down to the bottom. You'll run that nose right to the bottom, right to the curve, and apex it up, and then you're gone. It's like, where did he go? I was sitting there, I was talking to Corey last year when we were doing that show, and it's like, where did you come from? And it was such an amazing watching you, through the years, and you haven't lost anything. I don't care how old you are or anything else, and you think, well, I might have lost this, or I'm telling you right now, from, me being a kid, and then watching you now, kind of getting a little bit older and whatever, you have as much talent now, or even more, as any driver out there. And you racing some of these kids. I've talked to Bryson James. I've talked to Colin. We just got done doing an interview with Joey Tanner, and they're not just like, oh, we're just going to go out there. They're scared of you guys still. They sit there and they say, Man, I mean, people come in like, oh, we got to worry about Colin or Bryson or whatever, and like, no, we still got to worry about the veterans, because guess what? That's why they're a veteran. That's why they're in the Hall of Fame, is because they're that good. And any time in the week, you guys are the guys to beat. And so, me personally, whatever, you haven't lost anything.
Well, I guess I can argue that when I get out of the car when it's all over with, because as soon as the race is over, I'm going, man, I just can't keep doing this forever. But, once you get in the car and your adrenaline pumps up and everything, I mean, you do what you got to do. And, I guess the old saying, the old age and treachery kind of comes to play. And it's just a never give up thing. I've never been one that, I'll take what it's given, but I'll try to think about it and gain and try to do as best I can with what I have at the moment. I'm okay if we don't win, as long as we're going forwards and we're making progress.
So you're not running for a title in 2016. I mean, you kind of say that at the beginning of every season. We're not going to focus on points. We're not going to focus on points. But if you find yourself in the points, you're going to give it a real shot. And after you answer that, let's kind of talk about this car that you're in, because, with the rocket chassis and the engine and the sponsors and stuff, let's kind of get that out there and talk about what these guys are doing for you.
Well, I mean, I say I'm not going to race for points, whatever, but my intention is to race every race. If that happens, great, and hopefully we'll do okay in points-wise, but I'm not going to be discouraged if it isn't. My ultimate goal is I want to win some races, and if you win races, then hopefully the points will come along. It's a little bit tougher now with there not being a lot of money involved in points and stuff, because, frankly, when we're racing, it was 5,000 win the points. That was a pretty substantial number to go for and stuff. So I've already won championships. It's nice to have a nice new shiny trophy, but it's not as important to me as just having fun is. So that's my intention. I really intend to go to every race we can. If that works out, great. If not, we might have to take some time off, but that's the way it is. As far as the car and everything goes, it was a great car for me last year. It was a little bit of a learning curve. Normally in my career, whenever we got a new car, it took us a year to really get them figured out, and then the second year we really came along strong with them. I hope that's how it works out this year.
So with that said, how should I word this, basically, is what do you do on your off season? What do you do on your off time? And I know driving force is a huge part of you and everything else, and it's coming up. Do you feel that Darren Coffell has 5-10 more years on a car and then driving force, or how? I mean, what is your next goal? I mean, what do you want to do? I mean, how long are you gonna stay in a car?
That's actually a really good question, because I keep asking myself that same thing. I keep saying that this is probably the last car I'll ever own, but then I said that a few years ago too, and I kind of came back into it. My problem is I really enjoy these cars, and I have as much fun building them on the off season as I do driving them. Sometimes probably more, because I like to tinker with things, and it's just fun to build something and say I did that. So that being said, I honestly don't know. I don't know that if I could find another driver to put in there that I jump on that. I might want to just take time off then. But I'm pretty sure if I ever do just take time off, I probably won't come back into it. But, this year I've got a good car. I'm getting a new engine. I'm kind of putting my all into it. I keep saying right now that this is probably the last stuff that I'll probably go for. But, if things change and the world comes around and late models become the biggest, dominant, coolest thing on the planet again, then that will probably change.
Well, they're still cool because you're driving them, and it's cool to watch you go around circles. And I hope it's 10 years from now or whatever before you ever think about retiring from a race car, because it's always cool to watch you go out there. It's always cool to watch you qualify. You're one of the top guys that just make it fun, even qualifying. You make it look cool and everything else. So with Driving Force Graphics, what's the next step for Driving Force Graphics? What do you have planned for the future for them?
Well, I mean, we're a pretty busy growing company. We're going through a little bit of a stage right now where we're bringing in some new people into our company. Like all companies over the last few years, it was a pretty big struggle. In the last year, we probably had one of our best years ever last year. I got some really good people behind me, but I am looking for some more. And it's always a challenge. I just like to excel at whatever I do. I don't need to get rich at it, but I enjoy doing graphics, and I have fun doing that.
So you kind of mentioned that this is probably the last race car you're gonna own, and maybe the career is kind of winding down a little bit. Do we see Darren traveling anywhere at the later stage of the season, like maybe making a visit down to the Budweiser Nationals or heading down to Vegas or maybe Arizona in the winter?
Well, I've always approached it to the point where if I'm going to go there, I have to know that I have to feel like we'll be competitive. We got to be a top 10 car. The last couple of years, I can't really say that I felt like we were a top 10 car. For some reason, the Californians used to fear the Oregon guys, and it's kind of turned around a little bit now, and it is a bit intimidating to go down there. Do I want to? Yes. Money-wise, it's been kind of a big thing.